Hi, I'm Jen with PepperHarrow, and today we're going to be talking about the principles of floral design. We'll also be talking about some of the interesting garden-inspired little sparkles you can add to your design. These are more uncommon things that really add a lot of pizzazz and garden-inspired design style to a design. So hopefully they're things that you've seen out in your yards or on your nature walks that you've taken that you haven't thought before about using in a floral design. We want to inspire you to look at the world around you and to use simple things that you may even grow in your own yard to make something beautiful as a centerpiece. Now, I'm going to focus on the design principles, but my husband Adam's going to be joining us here in a minute, and he'll be providing and going through some of the more interesting textural elements that you can add to really add that sparkle to your design. So the first thing we're going to cover are the design principles. The first design principle I want you to think about is what vase you're using. And you can see I have several vases here in front of us. And for me, I use a myriad of different vases, but you can see I gravitate more towards white. I did this specifically because I know I have these gorgeous garden roses and I really want to highlight them. I really wanted to go with something more neutral, so I'm going to end up using this vase. So I kind of knew that. I looked at my focal. This is what I'm going to use for my focals, and I picked out my vase depending on what my focal is. So this is what I'm going to use today. But I had a few other options, and if you have extras, you can use some of the smaller guys to use and place around your main centerpiece. So keep that in mind. If you have extras, do lots of little ones and spread them throughout your house or put them on your table around the main centerpiece. It can look very beautiful. All right, so looking at my vase that I'm going to use and the other two options I have, the first thing I look at is how tall is my vase or how wide this opening is to determine how tall or how wide my centerpiece needs to be. So looking at this, I typically take 1.5 times the height of my current vase. So I'm going to go about 1.5 times high. It's going to be somewhere right up in here. To start, if you need to take a measuring tape to figure out what 1.5 times is, you can do that. At this point, I just kind of eyeball it and try to figure it out. The next thing I look at is where am I going to have the centerpiece be in my home? So you have to decide where your centerpiece is going to be. A lot of people place them up on a fireplace mantle. You can place them on a large entrance table. I'm going to have mine on my dining room table for family dinners. And the other thing I have to keep in mind, because I am having this at my family dining room table, is I don't want to make it too high up where we can't see each other as we're enjoying a meal. So the thing to look at for that, especially if you're going to be using it in that type of a scenario, is you want to look from your elbow to your fist height from where your vase is. So looking at this, I'm taking it from the elbow to the top of my fist. My centerpiece would be this high before people can't see over it any longer, which happens to be about 1.5 times the size of the vase I'm using. Now, if you're using a taller vase, instead of going up, you can actually go out to make up for that height difference. So you don't have to go high if you're using a larger vase, you can go out. Keep that in mind, especially if you're wanting to do a dining room table centerpiece like what I'm doing here to be able to see over people. You can go out wider than you can tall to kind of offset the fact that you can't have that particular height. If you are a beginning floral designer, you'll want to pick and select a vase that will be easier to work with. And what I mean by that is the vase that I'm using today is pretty open. So the mechanics that I'm using on the inside of this will more readily come out. There's nothing really to hold them in place. And I'll get to this in a minute, showing you exactly how I do the mechanics of how I set that up. But my preference is, especially for beginners, using something like this where you can see it's big on the bottom and then it comes in for a closure. There's a little lip here that holds everything in so that it doesn't bounce out as much. I'm going to end up using floral tape, but you don't have to use floral tape on these, and for the most part my mechanics are staying inside of the vase. keep that in mind. I love to use a lot of cereal bowls and inexpensive vessels like that, but they're very hard to design with because my wire wants to come out. So keep that in mind as you're selecting a vase for what you're doing for your centerpiece. So you heard me kind of talking about the wire. We use a 2-inch chicken wire, and I literally got this at my local hardware store. People were always like, how much do I need to get? I'm like, get a roll. You'll always use it, and if you don't use it, you'll have it forever to be able to pull on and use. So 2-inch chicken wire is what we use. I ended up cutting out a 12 by 12 piece, and this is one that I've reused. I love chicken wire because it can be reused. I haven't exactly come up with a number of times, but I know this one has been used at least 5 times. I like the sustainability of it, the fact you can reuse it. And now that I've designed with using chicken wire as my base for my mechanics, it's a real game changer for me. I've been able to love the way it holds up and holds my flowers in place, and I think you'll find that too. Once you start designing with chicken wire, you'll never go back. To cut the 12 by 12 piece out of the current roll of wire, I use my little wire snips and just snip them out. I usually make Adam do this part, but I have Adam cut out my 12 by 12 piece. I have my little wire snips. The secret really is I try to use my floral snips for this process, and Adam always catches me and I get in big trouble. So always use the proper tools to use on cutting metal, because your floral snips will get very dull if you use it to cut up metal wire. So pro tip. All right, now that we have our 12 by 12 piece cut out, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna just start crinkling it up and making it into a little ball. Remember, you do not wanna keep those holes all nice looking. You want them to be a little bit crinkled, and the reason why is because once this gets down in the bowl, it's gonna hold your flowers in place. And if you leave that perfect hole in place, it's not going to catch your flowers in greenery and make it hold in place. So now that I have it a little bit crinkled, I'm gonna push it down in. And you guys heard me say, we talked about how now it's a little bit open. It wants to kind of come out a little bit. Because of that, it's a little more advanced. I'm going to take and use my green floral tape and make a little grid across the top to help hold in my chicken wire. The important thing to remember about the green floral tape is it is not extremely solid. So you're still, even if you use this, you're still going to have to be a little bit careful that you do not pull your chicken wire out of place. So no jerking flowers out. You want to twist and pull if you need to get anything out. And sometimes I incorporate that same process as I'm putting them in. Push and twist and push lightly. So don't try to force anything in that doesn't want to go. So I'm going to start by doing my vertical. I have my Skadden snips that I use for floral design. And I'm going to move that out of the way, and this guy too. All right, so I have that. Now on the other side, I'm going to do horizontal and go like this. I don't want to put a ton on here. I don't want anyone to see my mechanics. Occasionally, I'll take an extra little piece of tape, and I'll show you this. So you can see this guy already came up. So I take a little piece and I put it like this, just to anchor this down a little bit so that it doesn't come off. I'm going to be outlining a little bit more about some of the design principles that I'm going to use for this color palette that I picked for my vase that we have here today. All right, now that I have this in place, you can see there's no water in. I'm going to grab my water down here, and I'm going to put a little water, I don't know, maybe more than half. When you first do a design, your flowers are really going to suck up a lot of water. So you really want to make sure that you check the water and make sure there's a lot of water in here for your flowers. Now we're going to talk about some of the exciting stuff for design. This is the stuff I love. So we're going to talk about shape, and we're going to talk about some of the things that make our design special. So how I would build my design here. So the first thing I would start with is laying a greenery nest. I just think of it as a greenery nest because this is what my flowers are going to sit in. It's just going to highlight my bloom. So I don't go too crazy on my greenery, but I will put a few of the things that you see here in here to build my shape. The other thing you want to think about is kind of how we talked about where is your centerpiece going to reside? If this is one that's going to sit up on your fireplace mantle, you only need to design it one-sided. People are only going to see it from the front, essentially. So you would just need to do one side of your design. In the case I'm talking about with being on the dining room table, people are going to see this on two sides, maybe on the ends, but I'm going to do it two-sided. And really, this is something that helps with putting the tape on. The tape will help me keep a guide of one side versus the other. So as I'm going around and doing my design, I will literally take this and turn it 180 degrees around just so I can get to the other side. Work on this side a little bit. Again, turn it 180 degrees around. Work on the other side. So I'm literally doing a two-sided design. If you're putting this on an entrance for an entryway or at a hotel or wherever this might be going, then you would want to do an all the way around design. So I basically I'll pop in a few things in my design. I'll spin a little, pop a few things in, I'll spin a little, pop a few things in, spin a little. The spin is very important. I've taught design classes where people have not turned it and it kind of leans off to one side because they went heavy on one side as opposed to the other, and you'll kind of see it kind of slide a little bit. So to do things a little bit evenly, you just have to make sure that you're getting that turn in to make sure that you can see it all the way around. Either way, there are no wrong answers here. Even these principles are flexible, and don't let them inhibit you or prevent you from doing something beautiful or experimenting. Our big message during our design classes that we give to others is there are no wrong answers. What you create and what you make with the beautiful things that you have is an expression of your own internal artist. It's your own art. So there's really no wrong answer. It is the creativity and the artist inside of you. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about how we go about building our nest and then talking about our focals. But before we go there, I want to kind of give you a little bit of an idea about a focal flower and what a focal flower is. Now, you saw that I referenced we have these gorgeous garden roses. These got shipped here, and what a luxury. It felt amazing. I popped open the box and I was instantly hit with this amazing garden rose fragrance. It was incredible. This beautiful bouquet has filled my home for the last few days, and you can see I just popped them into a beautiful picture, and honestly, they look beautiful just like this. I don't actually have to do anything with them. They look incredible. So know that with design too, you don't have to take beautiful things and mix it with other things, only if you want to. This mono design style with just a bunch of garden roses put into a vase together, it looks incredible as is, and I could even just take these and pop them in here and it would look absolutely incredible. So keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to show you with our focal flower, which is the rose here, the focal flower, the reason that I'm calling it a focal flower is it is the flower that I'm looking at that I want to be the star of my centerpiece. The other thing I look at with a focal flower is what colors are in here that I can incorporate and pull in from other places. So looking at these garden roses, there's actually some yellow in here in the center of the flower. There are some oranges and peaches. There's a bunch of different colors. And then you can see on the rim here, there's actually some dark pinks. So when I say that I'm using these garden roses as my focal, it's the one I'm using to look at from a major color standpoint, how to pull in and use some other flowers in my design, but it is really the anchor of my entire centerpiece, and I want it to really be highlighted and be the star of the show. So that's why I picked my garden roses for the centerpiece that I'm going to do today. So after I lay my little bed of greenery, these are the next thing that are going to go into my centerpiece here. So first, you're going to put your greenery nest in, then you're going to put your focal flowers in. And then the next two things you're going to do is pop in some of these supporting actors. So I picked a bunch of different colors that I thought would kind of complement these roses. So I grabbed a cafe au lait because blush is in here. I have an orange dahlia, which is completely gorgeous. I grabbed some kind of peachy, rusty orange celosia here, and that's so beautiful. And I grabbed some of the green leaves. Of course, these don't have a lot of green in them. The green is going to come from the nest I build, but there's some bridge in these leaves of some of the autumnal yellowing of the leaves that ties into some of the yellow in the center of the roses. That looks incredible. I grabbed some more kind of blushy colored dahlias. I don't know if I'm going to end up using all of this, but I have it here if I need it. The other thing I grabbed were some of these really twinkly little beautiful forget-me-nots. And these forget-me-nots are almost done. They're going to seed. They're basically dying on the vine out there, but they have these little twinkly little sparkles of pink on the end. They have these beautiful seed pods growing, and when we talk about adding an interest in sparkles, this is something that's going to add interest in sparkles to my design. The other thing I grabbed was some of these dark pink lisianthus, and they're smaller. I want them to be smaller. I don't want them to steal away from my roses, but I needed something to kind of bridge some of this dark pink that was filling in around here. So that's why I grabbed those dark pink lisianthus. And I grabbed a couple light pink straw flower too, just for something interesting to pop into the design. So those are the things I grabbed out of the garden to include in here. And another interesting thing that I'll call out too are some of my little grasses. These little grasses are going to add a lot of interest and a sparkly little detail for my design that we're going to do here today. So now that you know some of the design basics, I want to see what you can create. I hope you left this today very inspired to create your own centerpiece and design using some of the beautiful, natural, organic ingredients around you. Now I'm going to do my design. I'm going to do it off camera while Adam comes in and talks to you a little bit more about some of the more interesting ingredients that we like to include in our designs. Now that our design is done, I'm going to bring Adam in to show y'all some of the beautiful, interesting additions to bouquets that you can include.
We have a few things here that we've gathered around the farm. Well, we just need to make a little room here. So we have our things that we've been gathering here, and what do you want to talk about this with?
Oh my gosh. So I want you to be inspired by pulling in some of these uncommon things out of the garden or out of your yard to include into a floral design. So these are some that definitely uncommon.
Yeah.
You gathered some really good things here. You saw some of the cool things that I incorporated in my own design that are very unusual to just kind of pop in, but these are the interesting textural things that kind of make your design look a little bit more garden inspired, and that's what I was after. Those bodacious roses were really elevated, and not that I wanted to really bring it down a notch, but I wanted it to look more natural and garden inspired, and some of the things that I put in my design made it look that way. Give us an overview of some of these things that you pulled from around the farm to share with everyone.
We have a lot of great things. The first thing I always want to talk about are the herbs, and what we love to use in our design work. Our bouquets that we send out at farmers market, we love fresh cut herbs, and things like this mint and rosemary and sage work wonderful in designs.
And you probably saw that I included some apple mint in my design as part of the greenery base. I always try to include some type of herb always in some of my floral designs.
Pennycress is something that we use dried, or it's great fresh as well. It's a beautiful like limey verdant green, as well as these native grass, not the millet, but these native grasses that we've gathered around the farm add a lot of texture, and these are the things that we call sparkles. These add a lot of sparkles to your design work.
These are ones that we just had on our property, so we haven't even ID'd them yet. They're amazing.
And this is Purple Majesty Millet. Adds a lot of interesting texture to your arrangement, as well as it's fun for kids to play with. If you want to, like, when your arrangement's done, you can take it out and let your kids play.
And I like it that it can be used fresh or dried too. Did you already say that?
It can be used fresh or dried.
There you go. But it's Adam's favorite, and it's something we specifically grow for fall bouquets. So millet, especially in the fall, perfect.
Some other things that we have here are this awesome coral berry that we grow here on the farm. We grow it in our landscape as well as for production, but it makes these amazing, like, pinkish berries that kind of work perfectly somehow for fall.
They bloom in fall. They turn this pink color in fall, which really doesn't go with the season. But if you're doing a lot of wedding work, or if you're somebody like me who likes pink or blush tones all year round, this is your bush for sure. I like it also though because you can start to see the top up here. It's going to start turning white. So these pink berries end up starting to turn a really beautiful white color, which I also like to use. I always feel like we roll around at this time of year and it's usually homecoming time, and I have to do a lot of corsages, and all the girls, for some reason, I don't know why, they want white in their corsages. So I end up tucking in some of those pink coral berry that have turned white, and it works perfectly.
Another thing I grabbed was this eryngium that we grow in a couple of spots here on the farm, and it's another one that just adds a unique texture to design work.
I love using it in flower crowns because it's small, dainty, and very interesting looking. Okay, what else we got?
One of the other things that are really cool are these hyacinth bean pods. All sorts of pods. We look all around for pods that we can gather and forage for design work. We forage all sorts of different greenery and rediry, for this one in particular, from our farm as interesting elements. The wide variety of greenery as just a base in your design work creates a lot of depth just in and of itself. And so we recommend shrubs around your yard. Don't overlook something.
I guess we forgot to include one last thing. Adam is a big believer in a lot of 9 bark, so shrubs. 9 bark is his favorite. What's it called? Autumn Jubilee?
Autumn Jubilee is, if we could grow a farm of just Autumn Jubilee, we'd be all about it.
It is an amazing color.
Yeah.
It changes color by season. It ends up this time of year turning a really nice orange color, which is perfect. But in spring, man, it's like chartreuse. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Jinx. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope you got a lot out of our design principles video and got some inspiration about some of the uncommon things you can include to add a little sparkle to your design